Good afternoon. This is David Unsworth, host of the PanAm Post English podcast. Oprah Winfrey's recent speech at the Golden Globe Awards fueled speculation that she may be considering a run for president. In the wake of Trump's improbable election as the first successful presidential candidate with neither prior military or governmental experience, American appetite for entertainers turned politicians appears to have increased. But would American voters really elect a television star twice in a row? How likely is Oprah to run, and how would she fare in a Democratic primary or in a general election against Trump? I'm joined this afternoon by PanAm Post contributor Ben Jackson. Ben, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Dave. I'm glad to finally be able to do one of these with you. It's a very interesting topic. You mentioned, are the American people going to elect two entertainers in a row?
Back to back.
Back to back. I actually think it's more likely that somebody who is equally unqualified be elected post-Trump than pre-Trump. I think in some ways this could be a bad sign of things to come, a negative sign of things to come, where essentially U.S. presidential politics turns into just a sort of popularity contest.
A reality TV series from New Hampshire and Iowa all the way through the general election, something like that.
Exactly. Like, who's in the public sphere, who's in the public eye, who most encapsulates people's frustrations and what's most important to them at the moment. Because that certainly seems to be the wave that Donald Trump rode all the way into the White House. And
so let's talk about Oprah's positives right off the bat. She starts out with almost instant universal name recognition. There's almost no one in America who doesn't know who Oprah Winfrey is. And she starts out with, I'm not sure what her net worth is, but I believe it's over $1 billion. I think
it's impressive.
Low single-digit billions. So she could entirely self-fund her campaign. She doesn't have to worry about fundraising.
In many ways, she has the same advantages that Trump was able to exploit. Only
exactly.
She has the further advantage that he's already written the blueprint that she just has to follow. Obviously, different ideology, but the same sort of bombastic, enough is enough, we've had enough of this. And we know that it's not all right-wing, because a lot of the people that actually voted for Donald Trump were the same people that voted for Barack Obama.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and in a strange way, Barack Obama is a sort of blueprint, the sort of prototype even for someone like Oprah Winfrey or Donald Trump, even though he was obviously a politician, but in some ways an outsider, in some ways an underdog. He certainly was the first time he ran against Hillary. Curiously, Oprah Winfrey supported Barack Obama and not Hillary Clinton, which, in a strange twist of events, could end up being advantageous to her in the future.
And then in 2016, of course, she endorsed Hillary Clinton. What we've seen recently in the Democratic Party is a real divide between a kind of more mainstream DNC type faction that backed first Bill Clinton and now Hillary Clinton, and the Bernie Sanders wing. And Bernie has some close allies, people like, say, Elizabeth Warren or Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio. How would Oprah fit into the Democratic Party? Would she be more... I don't think of her as some real left-wing activist type.
No, I
don't really know what her political views are, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I know she's a Democrat, but where would she fit into a Democratic primary?
That's a great question. And if it weren't for Trump, I would probably just dismiss the prospect of an Oprah presidency outright. But what you said it yourself. You don't know what her platform would be. I still don't know what Donald Trump's platform is entirely, to be honest. And he's constantly hiring, firing, disputing, feuding with people that are supposedly on his side, people that helped him get elected. Like,
it does get a little tiresome after a while.
Indeed.
It's just like a revolving door at the Trump White House.
And I think with Winfrey, we could see something similar on the DNC side, with her not really coming from a political background, so not necessarily having core beliefs. I don't believe Trump has core beliefs. You could argue that either way. But I don't believe Trump has core beliefs, and I think it's unlikely Winfrey does either. She'd just rely on her cabinet, and which could be as subject to changes as Trump's is now.
So the people that are consistently batted about right now in a Democratic primary, you of course have Bernie Sanders, who seems to be the front runner right now, even though I still don't think he can win a Democratic nomination.
I suspect that he's a shill with no intention to win from the beginning. He might have been a plant to lose to Hillary from the onset.
And he's not even a Democrat. That's the funniest thing of all. He is not now, nor has never been a Democrat in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
He when he was back in Vermont, he supported kind of a fringe left-wing party called the Liberty Union Party that at times had advocated for things as preposterous as secession of Vermont from the Union, so they could set up like a Canadian-type socialist
He sort of
paradise.
came out of nowhere. Was never
He
never expected.
He never was well known. He never had high name recognition.
Right.
He came out of nowhere because he was completely the anti-Clinton.
And also, he was never expected to do well. And the fact that he did as well as he did was surprising.
He won dozens of states.
Right.
And he won states all over the country.
Surprising, and I believe in many ways indicative of the zeitgeist that we're experiencing now, which is a moving away from both the traditional Democratic Party and the traditional Republican Party elite and powers. For a long time, third-party candidates have attempted to run as independents or as libertarians, trying to attract voters by saying you don't have to vote Democrat or Republican. And they were right. But curiously, nobody has listened to their instruction on how to avoid the Democrat or Republican. People still seem to be interested in either voting Democrat or Republican.
And they're at a huge disadvantage, too, because we don't have a French-type system with a two-round election.
Exactly.
Where we saw in France last year the complete collapse of traditional parties. The Socialist Party candidate, which was the biggest political party in France, their presidential candidate, Hamon, I think his name was Benoit Hamon, got 6% of the vote.
Yeah, it's
Emmanuel
astonishing.
Macron, who was not running with any party support. He was running as an independent,
and he
won. Takes the thing out of nowhere, completely out of left field.
Yeah, and as unexpected as Macron's victory was on paper, the writing in many ways was on the wall going into that election. And the reason that kind of thing is able to happen in Europe, sometimes it happens in Latin America as well, is because they have a second round. Because there is no second round in the States, the mechanism isn't really in place for anyone outside the two-party system to succeed. But curiously, the voters and the constituencies have, in many ways, serendipitously enacted a form of revolt against their parties without choosing a third party, but just forcing their parties to transform.
Yeah, who would have ever thought that Donald Trump would take a Republican primary and that Bernie Sanders would win 20-odd states and win 46% of the votes? And even though I don't think many people actually think Bernie Sanders could have won even with the interference of the DNC, Hillary Clinton did have to flex every muscle, everything she had, twisting the arm of superdelegates, using the DNC when it's supposed to be neutral and impartial, and really using it as their own personal electoral vehicle. We're seeing revolution in both parties. We're seeing a rebellion, and we're seeing bases in both parties, a la Sanders and Trump, who say screw you to the party bosses.
Absolutely. And that in and of itself is not a bad thing. It could actually lead to very good results, good positive results. Well, I think what's clear is that we are at a crossroads politically right now. And this could go either way. This could go in a very good direction with having where we end up having candidates for the Republicans and Democrats who more accurately represent their constituencies and more accurately represent the average Joes voting for them, or maybe lifetime Democrats and maybe lifetime Republicans who who up until now have sort of just been forced into voting for whoever represented their party, whether they liked that candidate or not.
So the Golden Globe Awards were, what were they, on Thursday or Friday? They were, I think, 4 days ago. At any rate, Rasmussen did a poll.
I think they were even longer ago. They might have been the weekend before that.
Okay. Rasmussen did a poll this week, and surprise, surprise, Oprah Winfrey is leading Donald Trump by 10 points, 50% to 40%. And what some political commentators have said is that Rasmussen tends to skew a bit more Republican than the other polls. So it might actually be that Oprah really is leading right now by 12 or 13 or 14 points. Then again, it's 3 years and 2 months before an election.
Yeah, so the question is, what can she do, or what could she do, to maintain that popularity all that time? It's a little premature, and it could end up backfiring. People might be tired of her. If the election were this year, I think it's very likely she would win.
So Oprah, I have never actually seen an episode of Oprah's show. I'm assuming you have.
Well, I'm familiar with the format. I don't think I've seen an episode from minute to minute.
It seems like,
beginning to end,
if you sum up what her show is about, it's about self-empowerment.
Yeah.
It's about empathy. It's about understanding. It's about, in some respects, I think
she's a shoo-in for the Democratic nomination.
And she talks about things that I like. I mean, I don't know if, for example, Oprah probably wouldn't say the way to be successful is go get on a bunch of government programs. The way to be successful is take responsibility for your own life. If Oprah came out and said stuff like that, she might be a more attractive candidate than someone like a Donald Trump. She's very diplomatic, I get the sense. She's not gonna be like someone like a Donald Trump that's just gonna say Mexican, there's always a way that you can kind of excuse what Donald Trump said, but there's still no excuse for some things he said because it's just so gratuitous, It's a
very good point, and one that I actually hadn't considered until now. What if Oprah goes the centrist route? I just sort of assumed she would go hardline Democrat, but what if she went the centrist route and actually appealed, as you said, to disenfranchised Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, people who believe in the American way, making it on your own.
I don't think of her as hard left.
I
think of her as, well, I don't know, because I don't. She hasn't. The focus of her show has not been politics. It's been more like human interest. It's been more like, that we need to transform society. And we need to transform individual lives. But I don't think of her as a hard left type person. I don't think of her as a Bernie Sanders type person. I think of her as kind of more of a centrist.
Well, I guess she could go either way, but I'd still bet that she would go the far left way. Just because the show, while it's not political per se, it has a certain flavor of feelings and empathy and a sort of lack of objectivity, if you will.
But the field on that side is going to be so crowded. You're going to have Bernie Sanders is certain to run. I think everyone thinks he's running. He's the front runner. Elizabeth Warren, and if he doesn't run, Elizabeth Warren is almost certain to run, and they actually may both run. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they both run. And then you have other people on the left, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris.
Well, just think of how crowded the Republican side was
17
at the beginning.
Candidates.
Yeah, I don't think...
It was crazy.
I don't think it... I mean, I think it's likely that all the people hitherto mentioned do run on the Democratic side, but that won't be a hindrance once it comes down to the final two.
And then you have Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who's also likely to run. I mean, what is rather amusing, though, here is that all of the candidates, both Trump and the half-dozen leading candidates on the Democratic side, are pretty old. Kamala Harris maybe, I think, in her late 50s. Cory Booker is maybe the youngest one. He might be right around 50. But Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, these people are all hovering around 70. I think Biden is actually. I think Sanders actually is going to be 78 or 79 come 2020.
Yeah, she's essentially be sharing the stage with the same old white people that she's famously spoken out against. Old white people. I mean,
Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, even though they're popular in their own way and they poll like reasonably well, that doesn't really seem to me like the fresh, new, invigorating face of the Democratic Party.
No.
Which could be a good sign for someone like Oprah, who's just so different, out of left field.
And they thought that just by virtue of Clinton being a woman, that would be enough of a different thing, enough of an edgy thing, enough of a quote-unquote progressive thing. But it clearly wasn't. But now, if we have a woman that's also black, that's also famous, has a huge following in her own right. How old is Oprah? Because she's got that advantage, I think, as well against the other against her potential Democratic rivals. But I
think she's about 60.
Yeah, which in political terms,
63.
Yeah, which is
born 1954 in Mississippi.
Yeah, which if this were sports, it'd be too old. But for politics, it's a prime age. I think what this really is going to come down to is, can she maintain this much? Can she stay in the public spotlight for this long? Can she trend for 3+ years?
Yeah, and it is a long time. Although, it's going to be 2 years to the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary, which will both be in January of 2020.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, even if she keeps people talking about her until then, how is she going to do the other Trumpian thing, which is to keep stunning, in Trump's case, shocking, but in some way at least, to keep stunning and surprising and maintaining people talking about her even during the campaign.
I'm reading this piece here by Sean King at the Intercept, and one of the things he's really hammering here is that whoever takes on Trump 2020 has to be a master of social media. Trump's got, I forget the exact numbers, but I think he said Trump has 63 million followers just on Twitter alone. I mean, that's astounding. Trump is the king of social media, and using his social media to bypass the traditional media and just talk directly to his base.
It's a brilliant strategy, and
as much as it backfires on him, who knows? Maybe it's a net plus.
I think it is a net plus. I think as much as it backfires, and as famously as it backfires, I think I think Trump is the ultimate example of all press is good press. There is no negative press, really. I mean, the more people probably say his name more often than any other president, and obviously it's a normal thing to discuss the president ad nauseum on the news and on social media. But I think that pretty much every person in the United States and beyond speaks about Trump on an almost daily basis. I think more so than any previous president, and I think that is a net plus. And it'd be very difficult for anyone to compete with that.
The question here is, we're very polarized right now between the coastal United States, the Pacific Coast and the Northeast, and the Midwest and the South, red and blue America. Oprah Winfrey, is she someone that could flip some of these states that Trump surprisingly took from Clinton? States like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Iowa, states that Obama had won twice, and Trump came out of Michigan even. No one ever thought that Trump was going to win Michigan. He did so well in these Rust Belt states.
She can, but in order to do so, she would have to become, well, she already is a megastar, but she would have to keep people talking about her. She would have to make moves frequently to keep people interested in who she is and what she's doing.
And a lot of people, I mean, I've read half a dozen articles this morning on what political commentators are saying, and in general, most people on the left as well seem to be throwing cold water on the idea.
Okay.
I don't know what the probability is. I don't know if it's 50-50 she runs. I don't know if it's 60-40. I don't know what it is. But
well, you know, even aside from Oprah Winfrey...
2 TV stars in a row, I mean, really?
I think it's likely. And even if it's not Oprah Winfrey, I think there's
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
There are
Kanye
a lot
West.
of entirely unqualified people who we should not be talking about. Who we are. Yeah. Kanye West. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I mean, this is outlandish. But this is the post-Trump era. This is the post-Trump world.
I mean, at the very least, run for governor, run for Senate, run for a house in Congress, but run for a seat in Congress. But I mean, for example, like Kid Rock out in Michigan, it looks like he's actually not running, but they polled Michigan, and he was tying with Debbie Stabenow, the senior senator from Michigan. I think the American public does have an appetite for this, but
they seem to, and I believe if Kid Rock
the presidency
ran, he would win. I believe that.
As we wrap up here, one thing that I thought was very interesting, Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, had shared his thoughts about the Democratic field in 2020, and he said, "I don't think they have a good candidate." And why did he say, "I don't think they have a good candidate"? He said they don't have a centrist pro-business candidate. And they don't. I mean, I guess if there was anyone, it would be someone like Biden. Biden and Obama were reasonably well received by the business community, I guess. But, I mean, just the idea of someone like an Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders having a relationship with the business community.
It's hard to fathom. Yeah.
Talk about treading on thin ice.
So that comes to what we were discussing again as we wrap up. One of the primary reasons that these outsiders are gaining such traction is, but like you said, it's very difficult to imagine one of these old school Democrats getting support in the business sector. But an unknown is. Well, at least it's not a guaranteed, at least they know it's not going to be precisely what they didn't want. And strangely, when it comes to the economy, things have been going surprisingly well under Trump. So
the economy, that's why I don't quite buy into the idea that 2018 is going to be a disaster for the Republicans. The economy is soaring.
Yes.
GDP growth, unemployment, the stock market, the economy is going great. So in that sense, when Trump said, "I'm going to be the best jobs president God ever created, I'm going to fix the economy," well, he wasn't wrong on that. You know, the economy is soaring right now.
It's true, and people. Now, I think that has more to do with his conservative policies, but a lot of people might just interpret that as, oh, see, the old school insiders on both the left and the right, they're the ones keeping us down. They're the ones holding us back, and in the wake of Trump's economic success, they might be willing to vote for an Oprah Winfrey or someone of comparably inappropriate standing to run for public office.
Yeah, well, time will tell, and Oprah has around about a year and a half before she'll really have to make a definitive decision on this, and obviously other candidates like Biden, Sanders, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker are going to be kind of weighing the field and seeing how they could stake out a path to winning a nomination. I mean, it's probably going to be a pretty crowded field.
I think so, and I'm looking forward.
I bet there'll be another situation. I bet there'll easily be a dozen candidates. Trump is weak. His approval ratings are low, and it's going to be. They smell blood.
It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of strategies they come up with.
We've been speaking today with PanAm Post contributor Ben Jackson. Ben, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Dave. I hope to do it again soon.
Come back again sometime.
Thanks.